It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
Welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Interesting day. Day one of the GOP House Clown Show. They got the rules passed through. Was kind of held out a little bit of hope that maybe there'd be a handful of Republicans who are going, I don't know, bad idea giving the most radical of the bunch the keys to the car. I don't know, but hey, it went through. We now have the weakest speaker. Going to be fun to see how they bang him around, but the Republicans showed their hand right from the start. Remember the 4 years under the former president, under 45? What was the only thing they got done? Yeah, that tax bill. Because again, the only thing that Republicans truly care about, the tax fetish. That's all they care about. It's all that's in the ears. It's all that's, because understand, when a Republican allows the billionaire to cheat on their taxes, they get another donation. You thought I was going to go with their wings to get into heaven, didn't you? No, they get a tax. They get a donation, and that's what they're doing as we speak. The Republicans are holding their little clown show under the guise of the, you got to love the names. They are so much better at naming things than the Democrats. So much better. The Family and Small Business Protection Act. Because they're going to protect families and small businesses from the evil IRS. Because if you listen to the spiels that they gave today on the House floor, that somehow Biden was able to hire 87,000 agents, yesterday, and they're out there marauding, probably teaming up with MS-13, maybe even hired. I didn't hear a Republican say it, but I wouldn't be surprised that they believed it, that they hired MS-13 to come and be IRS agents. I'm sure that somewhere that will come up. But if you listen to the rhetoric, they hired 87,000 agents and they're coming for your children. Because according to them, they're going to attack the poor. Now, what's interesting is they're not absolutely wrong in looking at the data from the former guy and what happened. When the former guy went and cut the number of IRS agents down to the lowest number per return, probably since the agency began, where did they go? They went after the low-hanging fruit. They went after the poor people who were claiming the earned income tax credits and that kind of stuff. Because, hey, we gotta get something. We got to go through and we got to turn things. They stopped going after rich people. They stopped going after the really complicated returns, which is why the Biden administration and Democrats have said, hey, we need to hire more qualified IRS agents to go and audit these really complicated returns. We need to get people who understand the code and understand this isn't going to be easy. There's no way they're going to find 87,000 IRS people tomorrow. This is a build for the future. This is over the next decade. But if you listen to the sky is falling people, that he's already hired them, and that they're marching for the children. They're coming for your pennies and the sofa cushions. But the Family and Small Business Protection Act, more like the Tax Cheat Protection Act. Now remember, the former guy stood on a stage and said that, he didn't pay taxes because he's smart. And a bunch of his minions went, hey, he's smart, while they paid their taxes. And now we know, because we've seen some of Trump's returns, he didn't pay anything. He is smart. He got you. He got me. He got us to pay his taxes. And he got a percentage of the population to applaud him and vote for him. And to to vote for people who gave him even more tax breaks, because that's all the Republicans accomplished in the 4 years under the former guy. So it's interesting to me. Now, one of the things that came up during the House floor discussions was, under the Reagan administration, and one of the things that Reagan, advocated for was a ratio of one IRS agent for every 2,000 returns. We're nowhere near that today. It's, like I said, at one of the lowest levels ever. And it's one of these moments where you go, if you're overworked, underpaid, and understaffed, what ends up happening? You then go after the easy stuff. And the wealthy are very happy with that. The wealthy are thrilled by the fact that nobody's coming for them. And when they do, they don't have the resources to go very long. The audits are generally light because, well, they don't want to get tied up in long legal battles and long court battles, because the wealthy, they have the resources to fight this stuff out. Now, I find it interesting that the party who talks about debt and deficits, the party who talks about spending money wisely, on their first day, going to hike the deficit by some $114 billion, because the revenue that was going to be created per year out of auditing the very wealthy who pay zero, like Donald Trump, who pays zero, that was going to go into the coffers. Now, what you're going to have is you're going to have people going, but Rick, they spend that money in other places. Yeah, the Caymans. And what you're seeing is the wealthy getting much cozier with offshore tax havens, getting much cozier in places like the Cayman Islands or Ireland, or places where, you can hide a little money. Find it interesting. But the Republicans are there to protect those folks. And I want to know your thoughts. Are you okay with this? Now, look, I don't want working class people to be audited. I don't want people making $25,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year to be audited every year, and they're not going to be. This is a scare tactic. The Biden administration has said, as a percentage, things are not going to increase above where they are from people making less than $400,000 a year. We should want an enforcement arm to make sure that the taxes that we pay are paid by everyone. Because at the end of the day, what's happened over the last, 40, 50 years is the tax burden has shifted from the very wealthy to the very poor and to the working class. And we've created massive debt. I'm not someone who believes in debt. It's one of these things, it's just incredible to me that we've been allowed to grow this debt as large as it is when we have such an enormous billionaire class. Because we're told that if we give them all this money, they're going to use it wisely. If we give corporate America all this money, they're going to use it wisely. And what we find out what they do with it is they buy their stocks back. Huge, I think it was like $1.3 trillion last year in stock buybacks. That's $1.3 trillion in money that was supposed to be used for a productive use. New equipment, higher salaries for workers, lower prices, whatever it was supposed to go to something other than lining the pockets of the very wealthy and the shareholders. But that's all it's doing. It's corporate America saying we have no productive use for this money other than we're going to hoard it. And no one in government is moving to stop it, especially not the Republicans. If you saw it today, nope. Now, fortunately, this isn't going to go anywhere. It's going to die in the Senate. But it does speak to their priorities. And it is another attack on working people. And what's amazing, and what Republicans have done masterfully, is they've gotten working people making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year to go, you know what, I'm against taxes. Taxes are bad. And every time they hear the word taxes, they foam at the mouth like a Pavlovian dog, and think that what their tax liability is and what Elon Musk's should be are the same, and they're not. There was a point in this country, when we paid for roads and bridges, we paid for education, we paid for health care, we had investments in the future, and we didn't have massive debt and deficits. But we also didn't have gazillionaires. And we had a tax code that had a top marginal tax rate of 92%. And you know what those people at the top did? They didn't give that money to the government. They paid higher wages to their workers. They invested in healthcare facilities and educational facilities and libraries. They invested it in communities. They didn't hoard it. And this comes back to the question, what kind of an economy do we want? What kind of an economy do working people need? It's my thought. Want to hear yours. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Want to hear your thoughts. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, Supreme Court case coming up on Tuesday. Could have massive, painful ramifications. Right back. Stick around.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
So more than 7,000 nurses went on strike today in New York City. Members of the New York State Nurses Association affiliated with National Nurses United, fighting for a fair contract and to improve patient care. Something we should be standing behind and standing with. And I want to throw a shout out to them that we stand in support with them. Let's quick go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line one. Alice, how are we doing today?
We're doing okay. How about yourself?
I am doing well. What's on your mind?
Well, I just think it is totally amazing how they have their base brainwashed, thinking that taxes are bad because, of course, they all believe that at some point they're going to be billionaires themselves.
Yeah. No, I see. Here's the thing. And, I have a friend whose parents were very wealthy, and back during World War II, they were happy to pay the 92% tax rate because it was an investment in the country. We're not that country anymore.
No, we're not. No, we're not. And I just had an experience a few days ago with one of these dingalings where they were having a hysterical fit, and I said, well, congratulations. And they were like, what? I said, you make over $400,000. No, I don't. I said, then shut up, because it doesn't apply to you. So
it's the same, but it's the same thing with the death tax, the inheritance tax. I had people who were saying the same thing. I don't want to pay taxes when I die. You worth $11 million somewhere? You work in a minimum wage job, you got $11 million I don't know about?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I don't know. I have never in my life seen such an ignorant bunch of people. And I mean literally ignorant, because they have no clue about anything and how it applies to them.
Yeah. Fun times. That's why we need to get out there and educate them, Alice. Appreciate the thoughts.
Bye.
Thanks so much. But here's the thing. And look, the reality is this is where working people need to come back together. The right has done such a masterful job of misinformation and disinformation and feeding, you're going to pay taxes when you die. And you go, I hope so, because that would mean I'd have $11 million. That means I would have a lot of money. I don't. And what's amazing to me is we don't see the real attacks on us every day. Right now, there's a Supreme Court case that is going to be heard on Tuesday. We talked about it last week a little bit. It is the Glacier Northwest Incorporated versus International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local Union 174. We talked about it last week. It was, you had like 46 cement truck workers. They work for this cement company who came to work. The union and the company were negotiating. The negotiations broke down in the morning. The union said, hey, we're going on strike. The workers came in, said, hey, we're done. We're going out on the picket line. The trucks are running. They're out on the line. There's cement in it. You better deal with it. The company had no contingency plans, had no idea what to do. And as I said before, they probably didn't even know how to operate the trucks. So they were left in a lurch. Now, this is their problem. This is what happens when you don't negotiate in good faith. This is what happens when these kind of talks break down. And this is how this has gone for years. So what this company has done is they sued. They said, well, we had to waste all that concrete and we had to, dispose of it. And we're going to sue the union for the cost of this concrete. Now that's all new. The court in Washington State threw it out saying, this isn't the purview of the law. This is, part of what labor law is. There's nothing here for you. There's no way for you to win this. But they're taking it to the Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court that out of whole cloth came up with the Janus decision. The Supreme Court that you've got Samuel Alito, who has openly stated his disdain for organized labor and organized workers. A Supreme Court that is basically in the pocket of the Chamber of Commerce. When the Chamber of Commerce puts a brief in on a case, an amicus brief, I think the study said like almost 3/4 of the time the court sides with the Chamber of Commerce. That's how in the pocket the Roberts Court is in corporate America. Working people get just pummeled at the court. And you go, well, what's the big deal? It's just a little bit of cement. Understand, this is opening the door. If the Roberts Court does what I think they're going to do, they're going to make new law. They are going to, from the high bench, they are going to overturn decades of decided law. They're going to overturn the written law, and they're going to make sure that corporate America can use the NLRB and use labor law and the courts to stop people from striking by saying, look, hey, we lost money. And first it's going to start like this. It's going to start with, hey, we lost cement. You walked out and the cement went bad. Hey, you're going to pay for this. And then it's going to get to, well, that cement could have been poured somewhere and we could have charged somebody. So we lost profits because of you. So we're going to sue for lost profits. They've already tried it in some places. And there will be a chilling effect across the entire movement. Now understand, right now you're starting to see an uptick in people using their right to strike, using their ability to strike. And understand, corporate America, not happy with that. None whatsoever. Now understand, the law right now, as it is, says, look, corporations can sue and recover damages if there's vandalism, if it's deliberate sabotage. There was none of that. But they're trying to expand it, trying to make it bigger. And understand, the Roberts, Alito, Gorsuch, Thomas Court would love nothing more than to put workers and their unions in their place. This is one of those things. Now, this could expand into farm workers, warehouse workers. Hey, it's Black Friday. We're going to lose profits. Hey, we've got to deliver that produce. If the produce goes bad, we're going to charge you for all of that. And then there's going to be tons of shenanigans played. And then you're going to know that they're going to continue to file frivolous lawsuits just to burn up dues dollars, just to keep the unions spinning their wheels to ensure that they're not out there using their resources to organize new members or to represent their current members. This is bad stuff. But it's about putting workers and their unions back in their place. It's about silencing that voice, that one tool, that one tactic. The only tactic that workers have. The right to withhold their labor. And you go, well, how can they do that? How can they stop me from going on strike? They're going to sue you now. Look at in Illinois what they did to the teachers. If you quit your job as a teacher, they pull your license. They were pulling that for a while. There's going to be a point down the road, mark my word, if they get their way, if they are able to continue to use the Supreme Court to silence the voice of workers, to silence the unity of workers, the ability for us working people to use the only tool we have, the only power, and that's the power to withhold your labor. If they take that away, what's left? How do you then fight for better wages, hours, conditions? How do you make lives better? Because we've been going through 50 years of attacks, 50 years of suppressing wages, of shifting benefits from the employer onto the employee, from stealing pension benefits. We've been seeing 50 years of massive redistribution of wealth and working people getting the short end of the stick at every turn. And yet here it is. The next step in using the law against working people. The next step in using the Supreme Court against workers. Now I have people go, but and again, I come back to this political divide. This is a Republican issue. Republicans hate working people. It's glaringly apparent. Look at the policies they push, look at the Supreme Court justices they appoint, and look at the decisions they move on. It's always anti-worker. It's always on the side of money, on the side of power, on the side of corporations, on the side of the elite. Yet their rhetoric is, they care. If you listen to them today on the House floor, oh boy, they were just dripping with how much they care about families and small businesses. And the reality is they could give a tinker's damn. You know who they care about? They care about the rich and powerful. They care about the billionaires. They care about big corporations, the ones who line their campaign coffers. This will be, if it goes the wrong way. And I got to tell you, I have no faith in this Supreme Court to leave the law alone. Remember John Roberts, Mr. Balls and Strikes? Believes in stare decisis, believes in decided law, and yet this court has been overturning precedent for years. Basically just making stuff up because they can. The question is, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to respond? Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, Randy Corrigan's going to be here from Teamsters Local 1932 to share some thoughts on how this will affect his members and a victory at Amazon, and maybe how this could have undone that. Stick around. You're not going to want to miss it.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Between the Federal Reserve raising interest rates to create more unemployment and the Supreme Court dreaming up new laws attacking workers, you got to wonder, where do we go? I mean, look, Tuesday when the Supreme Court hears this case, this Glaciers case, the chilling effect across organized labor will be painful. Because again, as I said, the only power workers have is that to withhold their labor, to cross their arms and march their feet. And once you penalize that, once you basically criminalize that, wow. Now I look what's going on out on the West Coast, and there was a great story on Friday that we didn't get to. Amazon was in the process of firing a young woman who was a union activist organizer and the workers all came together, wore signs, wore buttons, and she got back to work. It shows that solidarity works. And you know what they did? They threatened to strike if they didn't replace it. This is the kind of stuff that scares the you-know-what out of corporate America. And here to share some thoughts on what it took and maybe share some of the details that I'm missing. I've asked my good friend Randy Corrigan to come talk with us. Randy is the president, or the secretary treasurer and principal officer at Teamsters Local 1932. Randy, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rick. I appreciate it. Always make time for you guys.
So walk me through what happened with Sarah Fee and Amazon. Walk me through, was she fired? Was she put on administrative leave? What's the story there?
She was put on administrative leave after a very minor conversation with a union avoidance individual, union buster, essentially, at the Amazon facility that she works at there in San Bernardino. And they put her on administrative leave pending, obviously discipline and termination. And this is the same group many may have read about that went on strike in October, walked off the job in August. I have had, direct action after direct action, withheld their labor in very strategic fashion to prove to Amazon that they're valuable and that their work is valuable in the area. And they obviously all rallied behind Sarah in that particular situation. And she was put back to work on Friday.
No, that is a huge victory and a sign of solidarity, and something that had to scare the you-know-what out of Amazon, and really, shocks across corporate America, because if working people can show that kind of solidarity and stand together, well, the pitchforks may come out at some point, and, well, the wealthy not thrilled about it, which is why, this Supreme Court case that's going to be heard on Tuesday is so important, because if this case goes the way I believe it will, one of the tools that would have been used to help get Sarah back to work would be off the table.
Yeah, it clearly shows that, once again, corporate America is using the judicial system, the National Labor Relations Act, to try to obviously restrict workers' ability to use what power that they have. And it's just a reminder that we shouldn't be depending, we being workers and obviously advocates for working people, shouldn't be dependent upon that system, that we need to encourage more and more workers to do exactly what these workers did in San Bernardino, these Amazon workers did around Sarah, which is, if you do this, we will do that. And that is very clearly saying this direct action that we are going to engage in is going to, we're doing it as for solidarity and to send a message that an injury to one is an injury to all. And so I hear what you said. I slightly disagree in a sense that I don't think it's the end of the world, and here's why. I think it's terrible. I think it's disgusting. I think that they're going to go that way. I think that we have seen the Supreme Court. We've seen what the laws have done in the last 40 years. And I think it's a constant reminder to us that we have to literally get back to more direct action that actually created the law to begin with.
Right.
That, what created the Wagner Act was this sort of activity and this sort of action of workers engaging. And then finally, Commerce said, okay, we got to come up with a fair set of rules for workers. And I think that I agree with you. I think that the Supreme Court is going to work against us on this and make it punishable, something that was normally preempted by the National Labor Relations Act. Why would they even entertain this? This is something that the Supreme Court should just bounce and say, we're not going to hear it. It's preempted under the National Labor Relations Act. Of course, they're going to hear it because we know that that's what we're getting with the Supreme Court. But it's also a reminder that workers have to do more of what these workers did when they surrounded themselves around Sarah, and that is to take direct action. Will these corporations fight back? Sure, they will. And so we're going to have to, do more and more of this. And workers are ready to do this. We're seeing this, in lots of places all over the country where workers are willing to take this sort of action.
No, I'm with you, but and I'm curious where you disagree with me. But if this goes the way I think it is, and they use this as a tool to go after workers and their organizations, financially to go after, first it's going to start with, we lost some cement or we lost some produce. And eventually, they're going to go after lost profits and future profits and all kinds of things, or just to get you guys spinning your wheels, spending money on legal fees and all of that. So I just see this as an attack tool to suppress strikes, but I'm curious where you disagree.
I agree that it's an attack tool as you described it, but where I disagree is I don't think it should scare labor, nor should I think that it should slow us down from encouraging workers to withhold their labor. I think that maybe do we have to be a little bit more guarded in how we're doing it, but we absolutely should accelerate the fact that we're doing it. And if the Supreme Court rules in which we think the way they are, that is a reason to accelerate these issues and to say, and to do and have more direct action and say, well, you're going to do this. Guess what we're going to do as a result of it? We're going to create more disruption as a result. We're going to withhold our labor more and more because you guys are just trying to tighten the belt on us legally. That's the part I disagree in.
No. I know how it should go, but my fear is it becomes a chilling effect because of now we're going to act defensively. We got to worry about, hey, can the coffers, can we afford it? Are we going to end up going broke? That's my concern, is that I know it will have a chilling effect.
Well, hey, you bring up a great point, and I think, as a principal officer myself, it's something that you've got to balance, right? How much the legal cost going to be? Well, there's a point where if we keep being scared in the labor movement into a corner on this stuff, then we're afraid to do anything. We've been paralyzed by a lot of this stuff in the last 50 years, and it's created a space of being inactive. And so, it's almost like, keep being paralyzed. Then there's going to be nothing left. Or let's get to work. Let's spark direct action. Let's move some workers into the street, and let's take control of whatever industry needs to be taken control of by doing it in the way that built the industry to begin with.
No, could this be a moment though? I know I say this every time there's another attack, another cut, another death of 1,000 paper cuts. That is this the one that makes people finally go, this is a bridge too far, and does what you're talking about, more direct action, more people waking up to the reality that, we've been getting screwed for 40 years.
I think sometimes you don't ever know what that breaking point is. If you go back in history and you see when general strikes happened or, when moments in time were created, they were not predictable. And I don't think this one's predictable either. It's another layer that's getting stacked on the situation to what you just said. In other words, it's another thing that's happening where workers are going, how many times are you going to cut out my feet from underneath me? And it brings people closer to resolution on what they need to do and to not depend on, let's say, the National Labor Relations Act or the Supreme Court to bail them out or any system like that. What we know in this country that's worked for over 100 years is workers depending on one another, workers in solidarity, doing what they have to do. And when you don't break that down, you're typically going to win.
Yeah. Now, on the other side of this, I wanted to get your thoughts. Is there a possibility, if this goes the way that I think we both believe it will, that this would work to the advantage of workers, that they could sue corporations for damages? Look, you got fired illegally, you got fired unjustly, you got put out, for one reason or another. Could you sue them for punitive damages outside of lost wages? Because this is basically what this case is saying.
I would say absolutely. Remember, if you're going to live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. And if you're going to take away the preemption on an issue, then the flip side of that preemption works on the side that you just pointed out. Absolutely, we need to press that issue, right? But not depend on it. What we need to depend on is that worker solidarity, and that, once again, direct action over and over again over the last 100 years is what has driven good policy. Not waiting on someone to create some good policy. It's really been some sort of direct action, then created a response from government or elected officials or commerce or whomever it was, and then they enacted a policy to deal with whatever that direct action was. And I think that it just puts us closer to that space. And clearly, I agree with you. I think we should immediately challenge it on the flip side. No different than challenging right to work, the way you can challenge right to work and allow a state to have card check recognition. And if you're going to allow this preemption to exist, and that's where the Supreme Court's got a slippery slope here. It's probably fair to say that they're going to have a narrow ruling in here, because the wider they rule in a negative space, the better our argument is to wipe away some preemptions we want wiped away.
Yeah, my fear in this, Randy, is as we said a moment ago, or as I said a moment ago, the only true power a worker has is the right to fold their arms and march their feet, to withhold their labor. We've seen in Illinois, for instance, where teachers were threatened with having their license pulled if they dared quit a job. I fear we're going to head to a point to where leaving employment, stopping work, withholding your labor will become so costly that we end up getting into horrible conditions that people can't get out of, and under the guise of a legal structure. That's what's concerning to me.
I think that's a good fear, and I think that any confrontation or situation that we get into in the future, we should always balance that and respect that and understand that there is the possibility for the end result to be an employer taking the extreme position and you having to deal with that. But also we can't be driven into a situation where we decide to allow the fear of that to prevent us from making it happen. I do fear, though, that labor leaders, and I'll say it, labor leaders that are too restricted by the legal sort of menagerie of the system, and kind of sometimes afraid of their own shadows, that fear will paralyze part of what we do. I think that, let's be real, Rick, that is there. There's a lot of elected individuals that sometimes you're convinced not to do things because there's every reason why not to do it versus looking at the reasons to do it.
Yeah, good point.
And you and I have talked about this subject before many times in the past. And I think that this is one of those moments where, again, direct action, and it is an attack on direct action. So I guess we got to take it square on, right?
Yeah, you're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Randy Corrigan. He's Teamsters Local 1932 Secretary, Treasurer, and Principal Officer. You can check out their website, teamsters1932.org. We'll get links out on social media. I got an email from Brian in Chicago, listening on WCPT AM 820, who asks about the UPS, possibility of a UPS strike, and what it would mean for workers there if this were to go into effect. And I've had this question come up a bunch of times about if there is a strike, and I'm not advocating for one. We don't know what's going to happen yet. They're at the table, obviously. Nobody wants it to happen, but it's an arrow in the quiver. But I don't want this to be one of those things that would have a chilling effect. I'm curious if you have a thought.
I do. I think that in some circles, it'll argue that it limits. In others, I think that it's going to be full steam ahead. And I think that we have to approach this, and specifically with UPS, there's obviously a lot of buildup around that contract right now. There's a lot of changes that have happened in that industry in the last decade. You work in that industry. In the last 2 decades, it's shifted tremendously. The transportation industry, the goods movement system, LTL, package, freight, all of that stuff. And I think that the buildup around the awareness on this contract for July, the employer will try to use this as a tool, as a chilling effect with the membership. And hopefully what happens is the membership see right through that, recognize that you have the right to do that. I personally believe that this union will make very good decisions when it comes to that subject, and we will make sure that we move in the right direction. There's a lot of elected officials within the union itself that are connected clearly to something this large, with more than 300,000 of our members connected to it. And how do I think it's going to affect us? I think that we just have to deal with whatever that decision is. And when the decision comes down, we got to make sure we're as creative as possible to make sure that we have the right to withhold our labor when the time is right.
Yeah, ultimately, while we're talking about withholding your labor, that's a worker-centric position. I look at Amazon, who seems to be moving in a direction of everyone being their own boss and being a gig worker, being an independent contractor, which is another issue that I think we have to deal with. And it's something that I think, the right and there are people in our political system very happy to move in that direction. I'm curious the movement towards getting those people as employees and fighting back, especially when you're talking about UPS, because as Amazon is growing their delivery system, they're doing it with a gig model.
Yeah, and these corporations dumping their responsibilities, whether they be on independent contractors or contractors that are handling the delivery of product and or third-party operations, is proliferated massively in the last 3 decades. That expansion of the industry operating that way has led to higher injuries. It's led to higher turnover. It's led to a number of things, including higher profits for these companies in the industry, which ultimately is what everybody's looking at. And they're not taking value in the workforce itself.
Yep.
As a result, you have a frustrated workforce. That's why 70% of the population wants to be in a union today, as the polls clearly show, because employers have not taken care of their workforce, and they have devalued the importance of that job and basically almost looked down upon individuals that are doing this hard work their entire career. And basically, you're not worth, you don't have the value to be able to retire in dignity or have great health care or, be able to provide for your family or just have a very simple middle-class lifestyle. So
that's why I think the organizing going on around Amazon, the organizing going on around places like Starbucks, the UPS contract, I think, is so important. I think these things are so important that we've got to stay up on them and fight in a direction that makes lives better and keep hammering that message. The one that I got as a young kid: union job, better life. It's that simple for me.
Yeah, and we need to get back to that. We need to make sure that our awareness, first of all, it's our responsibility as union members ourselves to be positive about our organization. And obviously, the trajectory of life being a union member is completely different than being non-union. That responsibility falls on all of us, and we've failed the last couple generations, have not done a good enough job of making sure that the new generation coming in understands it at the right level. That, number two, making sure we're engaging with the community, making sure we're building the right partnerships, making sure that we're going to city council meetings and school board meetings, and we're building very robust relationships inside of our natural community that we live and work in, so that there's familiarity with the union and the environment in which it provides, versus it just being some obscure thing that corporate America talks about.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right, Randy. I appreciate the time, the thoughts. Good on you guys for getting out there organizing. Good on the people at Amazon for standing up and fighting for Sarah Fee. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you for having us on.
Good stuff. Randy Corrigan, Principal Officer, Secretary Treasurer there at Teamsters Local 1932. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You'll listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
For a long period of time, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do.
I started my career in the operations field, just kept taking on new projects.
There's so many different opportunities that you can pursue in clean energy. But it was really great to know that there was a company so close to home in the renewable energy business.
Investment in the area would be huge. It would be great to be able to expand the area and give people jobs.
Having these opportunities for the younger generation would mean a lot for our community.
Calling all builders. Your country is calling you. Tackling climate change is the job of our lifetime. It's time to build back better. Let's get to work.
That frame, union job, better life. As a young kid, I got that front and center because, like I said, in the past, the neighbor got a union job at Ford, and immediately their lives got better. Food at the end of the month. Kids had better clothes. They got secondhand bikes, eventually got a secondhand car, eventually moved out of the projects altogether. But right in front of your very eyes, you saw their lives get better. Union job, better life, simple. And we're at a moment right now. This is an interesting time. That UPS contract that we talked about in the last segment, there's an opportunity And there's an opportunity for the Teamsters and Sean O'Brien, the new president, to really recreate what a middle-class job, a prosperous middle-class job looks like. There's an opportunity to put, Sean O'Brien's name up there next to Jimmy Hoffa, or even past Jimmy Hoffa. When my grandparents were in the work world, Jimmy Hoffa negotiated the National Master Freight Agreement, which created made truck driving jobs a solidly upper middle class job, professionalized the industry. And over the years, through bad policy deregulation, through horrible attacks on organized labor, what was once a very prosperous industry is now, just another job. O'Brien has the opportunity to put himself up there on the mantle with Walter Reuther and Hoffa and Murray and John L. Lewis and the rest of them, by delivering a contract that's going to ensure that every person makes a living wage. One of the things that UPS did during the pandemic that's disgraceful is they were paying their inside people, the people who load the package cars, the 4-hour casuals that come in, the armies of the 4-hour workers that they've got, the part-timers. They were paying them like $24 an hour to get them to come in during the pandemic. And then when the pandemic ended, they dropped them back to $14 an hour. And Friday you're working for $24. Monday they snatched $10 an hour from you. And it was one of those things where that's a reasonable, respectable wage. And what the unions, from what I'm told, is doing is, look, you can afford this. UPS had a couple $1 billion in stock buybacks. When you stop and think about the billions of dollars they spent on stock buybacks, what kind of raises, what kind of wealth could have gone to the working people who created that wealth? And O'Brien's a fighter. He's a guy, from what I'm told, he's a fighter. He's going to get in there and he's going to fight for it. And make the lives of those workers better. The argument's been for too long UPS has had it easy, and O'Brien, from what I'm told, the guy who's going to right the ship, going to fix the problems that have been there for so long. And this contract is how you do this, because the membership is there. The membership wants it. I have not seen this kind of energy around a leader in the years that I've been a member. Haven't. Maybe when James R. Hoffa took over, there was that energy at the beginning. This is an interesting moment. Going to be interesting to see what this summer brings to us. You got the UAW contract, you got the freight companies contracts are up, and the big UPS. There's an opportunity to revive the middle class, the working class of this country. And people like Sean O'Brien are the guys who are going to lead that. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com.
It takes a lot to raise a family. A good job, a good salary, and some patience. A lot of people my age are drowning in college debt. But I chose a different path. I'm a member of the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I work hard for my job, and I love what I do. I had a lot of choices for my future, but I made the best choice for my family. IBEW, the right choice.
The climate crisis is here.
These temperatures are almost unbelievable, even for a meteorologist.
And the solution is here too. Clean energy, like wind turbines and solar panels. Now, Congress has to invest in it, and in the millions of workers ready to install it across the country. Because in America, we don't hide from problems like climate change. We take them on. We innovate. We lead. Because if we invest in these workers and their future at this moment, that's how we build back better.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Laura sent me an email here during the break talking about the Supreme Court case on Tuesday. Now, understand, as I said, I fear this has already been decided. I fear that with the Supreme Court that we have, the anti-worker court that we have, this is going to go through. that they're going to give corporate America the ability to sue workers and their unions anytime there's a strike. But Laura brings up something interesting. She says, quote, bottom line, the GOP and millionaires, billionaires, trillionaire look around and say, hey, where are our serfs? You cannot leave this job. You cannot leave this town. You cannot leave your skills. We trained you for another employer. You will cost us profits. She writes, serfdom is the goal. They don't want us. They don't want the 1950s. They want the Middle Ages. Before the cumulative effect of the plagues freed the remaining laborers to begin to demand better terms for their work. This is reality. She's not wrong, and it's all about control. The messaging that we're hearing is quite frightening because it's the same kind of chorus over and over again. We hear, oh, nobody wants to work anymore. It's the same chorus we've been hearing for decades. In fact, a guy on Twitter, I forget what his name was. He went back like into the newspapers into the 1800s and came up with this frame of nobody wants to work anymore. And it's the same kind of thing over and over and over again. And this is where, again, we as working people have to push back and push back vigorously. Let's go to the phone. Talking with Joe Walsh a minute ago, he said something that I've always believed in the past, that reasonable people can sit down and hammer out an agreement. Sadly, we're coming to an era where that's really not the reality much anymore. And it's not just our politics. I mean, you look at the nonsense we're going to see in the House for the next 2 years. The incentive for Republicans is to do nothing. The incentive is to get nothing done. The incentive is to say no. The incentive is to block any progress, because the wealthy they're happy. They're happy with the deregulated environment. They're happy with weak labor laws. They're happy with poverty wage jobs for working people. They're happy with where things are. They're thrilled. So nothing getting done benefits the very well-to-do and big corporations. We know that. Which is why the Republicans are doing everything that they can do to make sure nothing gets accomplished. We don't invest in the future. We don't invest in healthcare. We don't invest in education. We don't help homeless veterans. We don't feed sick kids. We don't do any of that stuff. Oh, Rick, you're being hyperbolic. No, I'm not. They're literally talking about cutting things like Social Security and entitlement programs. They're literally talking about taking food out of the mouths of seniors and children. That is not being hyperbolic. That is just saying, look at what they're saying, look at what they want to do. But when I hear people like Kurt say, look, I'm out here and I'm doing this work because people need the help. And you go to this website, and I'm taking a look at it. The reality is there are people out there who are giving of themselves and helping. It gives me hope that in this country that what we're seeing on the idiot box, what are in the inner tubes, on the Twitters and on social media is not who we are. The worst version of ourselves don't always win. That we can sit down and we can hammer out agreements, that we can work together we can all row in the same direction. But sadly, we're not. Same thing with, you look at the fact that we've got a Supreme Court that, on Tuesday is going to hear a case that is going to potentially have a massive chilling effect on the ability for workers to use the one tool that they have to make their lives better. And that is the ability to fold their arms and march their feet and withhold their labor. That's it. I mean, we've already neutered the right to strike by allowing scabs to come and cross picket lines, and we bust them in with police protection, and we've got scab nursing companies who go across the country for millions and millions of dollars. We've already weakened, and now they want you to pay. Working people should be infuriated And I go back to 2015 and 2016 when the former guy was running, saying this is our future. The attacks on workers will continue. They will get bigger. They will come faster until eventually you will have no rights. Sadly, this is where we're heading. The question is, how long are you going to put up with that? How long will you tolerate what is right in front of us? How long? I know. You know, but those Democrats are bad. You know, I'm going to bite my nose off in spite of my face. What's good for the working class and what's good for workers and what's good for our communities and what's good for our economy. Never mind that, because somebody's doing something I don't agree with. That it all be damned. How ludicrous is that? Want to hear your thoughts, though? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find yours, you'll find ours.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com.